Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be making a wrap top with umbrella sleeves. So for this tutorial, I'll be using this plain black fabric and I'm using 1.5 yards. So let's begin. So I'll start by creating the back piece first. And I went on to cut out a piece of fabric that is wide enough to accommodate half of my bust circumference plus stitching allowance and long enough to cover the full length of the top. So first I'll mark out my shoulder line, and to do that I'm coming down from the top of my fabric by 1/2 inch. I'll mark that point across, bringing my ruler to square that out, and that line will be my shoulder line. And from this line, I'll be taking the rest of my measurements. And I'll be starting with my shoulder to bust measurement, which is my bust point. And for me, it's 11 inches. So I'm coming down from the shoulder line by 11 inches. I'll mark that point across, then square that point out with my ruler, and that will be my bust line. Next, I'll be taking the full length of my top, and I decided to go with 20 inches plus 1 inch for hemming allowance, making it 21. So decide how long you want your top to be and mark that point downwards from the shoulder line. So I'm going down by 21 inches and I'm marking that point across. Then I'll bring in my ruler to square it out, and that will be my full length. Now I'll be moving on to create the back neckline. Like I said, this is for the back piece. And for the neck width, I'll be using 3 inches. You can even use 2.5 inches if you don't want a very wide neckline. So from the folded end, I'll be coming in by 3 inches and I'll mark that point for my neck width. While for the neck depth, I decided to go with 1 inch. Now you can choose to do 1.5, but I'm going with 1 inch because I'll be finishing off the neckline by doing a double fold. So I came down along the folded end, which is also the center back, by 1 inch. And now I'll just connect these 2 points with my French curve to give the back neckline. Next, I'll be marking half of my across shoulder measurement along the shoulder line. So my across shoulder measurement is 16 inches, half of that is 8. So I'm coming in from the center back by 8 inches. I'll mark that point, and from there I'll be going down by 1 inch, and then I'll go on to connect that 1 inch mark back into the neckline. So I'm bringing in my ruler and I'm connecting that 1 inch mark to the neck width, and that line will be my shoulder slope. Now I'll be moving on to create my armhole, but first I need to mark my upper chest line, and you can get your upper chest line by either dividing your bust circumference by 6, then adding 1 to 1.5 inches depending on how big or small you are, and then marking whatever you get from that calculation downwards from the shoulder slope. Or you can simply come up from the bust line by 2 inches, which is the general way to do it, and that's what I did. So I came up from the bust line by 2 inches and drew out my upper chest line. Now in order to create my armhole, I need to connect the shoulder slope to the upper chest line. So I'm going to be taking the distance I have here from the center back to the end of the shoulder slope, and I'll be marking that same point on the upper chest line. Then I'll bring in my ruler to connect that point to meet the shoulder slope. Next, I'll be taking the midpoint of that vertical line, and I'm using my tape to do that. So I'll go ahead and mark that point, and from there I'll be coming in by 1/2 inch. And then on the upper chest line, I'll be marking 1/4 of my bust circumference. And now I'll connect these 2 points I just marked to meet the shoulder slope. So I'll be bringing in my French curve and I'm placing it in such a way that it's touching all these points. I'll connect them together, and there's my armhole. Now I'll be moving on to add my allowance to the measurement I have on the upper chest line. Remember, I marked 1/4 of my bust circumference, and to that measurement I'll be adding 1/2 inch for ease, and then I'll go on to add my side seam allowance, which is 1 inch. So the total allowance I'm adding to the bust measurement here is 1.5 inches. Now on the last horizontal line, which is the full length of the top, I'll be marking 1/4 of my waist circumference, and to that measurement I'll be adding my side seam allowance, which is 1 inch. So I won't be adding any ease to the measurement here because I actually want it tight. So that's it. Now I'll just go on to connect the upper chest line down to meet the full length. After which I'll be adding 1/2 inch along the shoulder slope for joining. So you can see there's no dart or zipper for this top. It's very straightforward. And that's it. I'll go ahead to cut out the back piece. So I created the back piece first because I'll be using this to cut out the front. I'll go ahead and place this on the fabric that will be used for the front. So I folded the fabric into 2 as well, with the wrong side facing up. I also made sure to leave out space that will accommodate the wrap. So from the center back of the back piece, I left out 25 inches. You can leave out less or more depending on your size. So just place the back piece on the fabric you'll be using for the front, making sure to leave out whatever amount you decide to use for the wrap. So now I'm going to cut along the shoulder slope, the armhole and the sides. So the way it is for the back piece will be the exact same way it will be for the front. And when I'm done with that, I'll move on to create the front neckline. So I'll be maintaining the same neck width, but for the neck depth, I'll be coming down by 7 inches. And I'm using the center back as a guide to mark that. Also remember the back neck depth was 1 inch. So when placing your tape, make sure to account for that. So right now, I'm going to connect the neck depth for the front to the beginning of the shoulder slope. So I'm just bringing in my ruler and connecting that point to meet the shoulder slope. And from here, I'll just cover out the parts that will overlap. So it's important to note that the deeper your front neckline is, the more likely your cleavage will show. So just bear that in mind when deciding how deep you want your front neckline to be. Now on this corner, I'll be coming up from the end by 2.5 inches. And I'm going to connect that point to meet the front neck depth. So first I'll be bringing in my French curve so I can curve it outwards. This is to avoid showing cleavage, because if you take it inwards, then your cleavage is going to show. So decide what you want and then go ahead to draw it out. So now that I've done that, I'll take out my French curve, then bring in my ruler and connect it to meet the point at the end of the fabric. Then I'll bring in my scissors and cut following that line. And after cutting, I'll go on to remove the pins and take out the back piece. Then I'll separate the front pieces and place them on top of each other. You can see I'm overlapping the pieces, and this is how it's going to sit when I'm done stitching. So guys, now it's time to start assembling the pieces together, and I'm going to be bringing in the back piece and placing it on top of the front piece like this, making sure the right sides are facing each other. You can also pin down the front pieces after overlapping them so it doesn't move. And what I'm going to do now is pin the front and back pieces together along the shoulders, and I'll stitch them together using a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So I've done that, and here's what we have. So this is the wrong side facing up. Now I'm going to be making a double fold from this end here, and I'll be stitching from there going all the way around the neckline until I get to the other end. So guys, I've done that, and this is still the wrong side facing up. Now I'm going to take this to the machine and stitch down the sides on a 1 inch sewing allowance. And when I've done that on both sides, I'll hem the end of the top by making a double fold towards the wrong side, and I'll stitch it round. So after stitching the sides and hemming the ends, here's what we have. Now I'm going to be working on the sleeves so I can attach them to the armhole. For the sleeves, I decided to do umbrella sleeves for this top. So I cut out 2 square pieces of fabric, and each measures 14 by 14, and I place them together right sides facing each other. And I'm going to be folding them twice, so this is the first folding. Then I'll fold it again for the second time like this. And then I'm going to take the measurement I have on this end right here, which is 7 inches, and I'll mark that 7 inches all around until I get to the other end. And when I'm done marking, I'll go on to cut following that mark, and this is what we have. Now I'll go ahead and open this up, and then I'll mark the midpoint of the distance from here to here. And from that midpoint, I'll measure out 6.5 inches. Generally, you should be marking out half of your armhole measurement, which is usually 7 to 8 inches, but this fabric has a little stretch, so I'm going with 6.5. Now from that midpoint, I'll be coming up by 2.5 inches. This will guide me on how high I want to cut out the parts that will be attached to the armhole. Now I'm going to draw out a semicircle from the midpoint to the point I marked at the end, and I'm using the 2.5 inches as the height for my semicircle. When I'm done marking, I'll go in with my scissors to cut that out. Then I'll make a small notch at this point right here to mark the center of my sleeve. Then I'll go on to open it up. So that's it for the cutting of the sleeve. The smaller circle is the part that will be attached to the armhole, and you can do that without cutting it open, but I cut mine open so it will be easy for me to finish off the edges using a bias tape, since I don't have enough allowance on that end as I ran out of fabric. So now I'm going to separate the pieces, then bring in my bias tape and place it on the right side of the fabric like this. I'll stitch all around on a 1/2 inch sewing allowance, then I'll flip it over to the wrong side and stitch on top of it. So I've done that, and here's what we have. I used the bias tape to finish off the raw end, and I did the same thing for the other sleeve as well. And now it's time to attach each sleeve to the armhole. And to do that, I'm going to be matching the notch I made on the sleeve to the shoulder line. And I'm placing the right sides together. I'll go on to pin this down, and when I take this to the machine, I'll stitch around the armhole on a 1/2 inch sewing allowance. And when I flip it over to the right side, it will look like this. I'm also going to join the open ends together and match it to the side seam. And I'll do the exact same thing to the other sleeve as well. So guys, I've attached the sleeves and here's what we have. We are done with the making of this wrap top. And here's how it looks on me. So I loved the top, but I really struggled with managing the fabric, especially when it came to the sleeves. I would have loved a puff sleeve, but I did not have enough. But yeah, aside from that, everything else is good. So if you stayed to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.